approve the agenda because we basically made a amendment to the agenda, so we just need to ask for a vote on that.
Need a motion to approve the amended agenda.
We actually
Can I
made
say something first, please? This is Heather, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Those two resolutions were approved at the August 13th forestry meeting. I have the minutes here.
Okay, so they were approved at the August 4th, is what you're saying?
Yes, they were. They were approved at the August 13th forestry meeting, in which the committee members that were present were Schutte, Merdig, and Huber.
Okay. Kathy?
This is Supervisor Ortman. Kathy, are you comfortable adding those back then?
She's coming to the microphone.
I would like them left as the way they are because the committee knew nothing that they were going to be on this agenda. If they had been, we should have had notice that they were going to be there. So it isn't being noticed correctly. So we'd like them taken off. We can deal with it tomorrow at our meeting.
They already went through the committee, they already were approved, and they already were recommended to the county board for approval.
Well,
That's what Heather said. She's looking at the minutes.
well, the committee is here and they don't want it on there.
The committee already voted to forward it to the county board.
Both
Heather.
of the resolutions were a motion made by Gary Merdig and both were seconded by Huber. Motion carried to forward to the county board.
Okay, I think given that the committee has forwarded it to the county board, we should leave them on the agenda. If they don't want to approve them, the county board can vote them down. But the committee's already weighed in and said they forward it to the county board for approval or denial. So my recommendation would be that, I apologize for going back and forth. My recommendation is that we would leave them on the agenda and we would basically vote on them per the committee's recommendation.
This is Supervisor Ortman. In lieu of this recent information, I would like to re-amend my motion to keep 5 and 6 on board along with your recommendations to the agenda. Thank you.
We appreciate the flexibility.
I'll second Supervisor
and who-
Quebec.
All right. Now we vote.
All right, we have a motion and a second to leave 5 and 6 on the agenda then.
Yep. And we added those two items. So all we need now is just a vote.
We can vote on this amendment to keep number 5 and number 6 on the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Now we'll go to Liz. Okay.
Okay.
This is Joe Rose. I'm here.
Thank you, Joe. We're basically going to, before public comments, we're going to have our public health officer speak about the recent COVID response that we have. I will highlight some of the things and you can ask Liz questions about this. As you may be aware, last week we had issued a order that would have taken effect on the previous Friday concerning closing all bars in the Ashland area and 2.5 mile radius. That basically was because we had about half the bars were closed due to their staff being sick or quarantined. And so there's becoming overcrowding in the bars that were remaining open. We felt it was in the best interest of the community and to limit community spread by closing all the bars for 14 days. So all the staff could get off quarantine and all the bars could open up simultaneously. Therefore, we would end up with a less crowding in there. This particular decision basically was challenged by the Tavern League, and they basically had weighed in and thought that the broad scope of the authority of closing every bar was beyond the reach of the county. In talking with our legal counsel, Max, and also WCA's attorneys and WCA staff, it was determined that if we wanted to go ahead and carry forth with that order, we would be sued. So our question was, do we want to spend the next 4 or 5 months fighting a lawsuit? Well, we don't have money to fight and would take a lot of time to do it, or should we basically retract that order and come up with something different? And so that's what we ended up doing. We basically ended up retracting the order, rescinding the order, I would say, on the same day it would become effective. So it went in effect, it was supposed to go in effect 12:01 a.m. on Friday. We rescinded it basically by lunchtime on Friday. Then we basically drafted a directive. And so in order to help with community spread, as you can see from the chart here on the graph, you can see we had been doing it relatively well up until basically, Labor Day. And so we basically directed we crafted a directive that doesn't have the authority of an order. It basically says for a whole community-wide thing. It's 11 pages long. It's posted on our website. It directs everything from daycares to bars to restaurants to grocery stores to every other thing that we have. And if a organization fails to comply with this directive, we basically would then look at them on an individual basis. A health officer would do an investigation. They would see, are they not adhering to either social distance or mask requirements? And she could basically go and issue an order or request a judge to basically order the people to comply with the health directive. So it's a little more convoluted. It takes a little bit more time, but from an accounting standpoint and a risk management standpoint, we feel it's a strong stance that gives us the ability to address these issues without being taken to court and being sued. That would take months and months and money and time we don't have. So that's kind of how we got to this point here. And Liz, are you on the line?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here.
All right. So I see on our chart here we're at 159. And this chart may be a day or two older based on the numbers. Where are we at today?
Yeah, that chart would be a couple of days old at this point in time. Current case count for Ashland County, we've had 168 individuals test positive within the county. We do still have numerous outstanding tests at this point in time, and daily new people are being tested. We continue to work to identify close contacts for those individuals that have tested positive to provide direction for isolation and quarantine, answer any questions or provide any assistance that we might be able to. In addition to that, we are also continuing to work and plan for our annual flu vaccinations. We actually start flu vaccinations in the schools tomorrow. Actually, Butternut will be the first school for school vaccinations, and that will start tomorrow. We have started some private flu clinics, and we are working on having community flu clinics as well. I believe we have 2 dates for that upcoming. We're hoping to get that information out to the public today so that we can make people aware of those. We're planning on having 2 community clinics actually at our office at the 630 Sanborn building. We'll kind of do it like a drive-through style. And then we are also looking at potential sites in the southern part of the county to make sure that we can offer vaccinations for everybody as well. Did anyone have any questions at this time?
This is Supervisor Quebec, and I just want to thank you for your really thorough and well-written directive. It's pretty comprehensive.
Thank you.
I have someone with their hand up. The last 4 digits of the number are 7725.
Go ahead. Lori?
Yes.
In order to have a better recording for the YouTube channel and people at home, the manager here, Joe, is saying that you need to pin my feed so they can see the chart like you're looking at. Because what's happening is, like, when Liz speaks, I guess what's being recorded on your end is just the image of Liz. And I think what you want to do is pin, it's in the upper, Joe, can you speak into this? Hang on, he's going to come to the mic so that we can get a better recording. I apologize, we're still getting better at this. We're trying to do this.
So Lori, what you're going to see in the top of Clark's feed, or actually my feed, the feed you're getting from me, is you're going to
Okay.
see 3 dots. And one of those options, when you click on those 3 little dots, is going to be in this video. So if you pin that, you'll get what Clark and I are sending all the time. So you want to click on or pin my feed from my computer. Does that make sense?
Okay. I'm going to pin it right now from your feed.
That's what you want to do. You want to do the one that's sending the chart to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I apologize for that technical interlude. So,
And then
Was there-
I still have someone with their hand up. The last
Yeah.
4 digits of
Bill Metzinger has the hand up. How can she see the hand up on the phone?
Point of
we-
order, shouldn't that come during public comment?
What?
But Liz did ask if anyone had questions.
Yeah, we're still basically just asking questions of Liz for COVID-related issues.
Okay.
So are there any further questions for Liz?
Bill Metzinger had his hand up several times.
All right, Bill's coming up to speak to the mic.
Is it going to be that the bars are going to be closed or not? Have we decided anything now if we do it correctly? And gatherings of, let's say, 100 people or more, are you stopping that? What is being done on that? I had someone call me yesterday and they said, well, the bars are supposed to be closed. And I said, well, I don't know. We didn't do it correctly the first time. Is there any plans now to do it right?
That is what the directive that was issued. There's specific information pertaining to various different businesses in there, anywhere from childcare or library public spaces to public outdoor playgrounds. Specific businesses are covered in there, and that also includes bars and restaurants. The directive indicates that indoor dine-in capacity is to be that of 50%, with approved seating capacity levels, so that they have to ensure that the tables and chairs are at least 6 feet apart. It limits the number of people to be sat at a table, so essentially a table is not to have more than 6 persons, so a 6-top. We recommend that the bar seating area itself be closed rather than having people sit at the bar, to have them sit at tables to encourage social distancing. There's also directive and suggestions in there for businesses to keep a list of customers and phone numbers, indicating the date and time that they would have been in the establishment to help assist with contact tracing. Also, we had encouraged, but it's not required, to postpone or suspend all current league activities such as pool and or dart tournaments, as those activities do not, by their nature, lend to social distancing. So at this time, they do not have to be closed, but there are outlined things in the directive for them to be following.
Any more questions for Liz?
I still have someone with their hand up. The last 4 digits are 7725.
So go ahead.
Heather, that was Ron Stender, and I had hit that quite a while ago, so you can disregard that hand up.
Thank you.
All right, Lori, we're still just seeing when you speak or somebody speaks. We're just seeing that blank screen, basically. And so we're just like like there, you just see Joe pop up. What we're trying to do is just pin the one feed that we're having that has the chart on it.
This is Elizabeth Franick. May I speak?
Yes.
Hi, Elizabeth Zott. Thank you very much for your detailed information. There are a number of individuals entering the place that I work, not wearing masks, and all of us were individually scolded on. We cannot, if we don't see them enter the business without the mask, we cannot confront them in the store. Our manager said that the corporate is not backing us on that. We had so many complaints that people without masks were being singled out and everything. We're trying to offer more curbside. We're trying to offer more call ahead and you can pay through the drive-through. People are not taking this seriously. Have you had any information, new information about the community spread, anybody being hospitalized and further being out in the public, not showing symptoms? I mean, how can we stress this to people that this is not a joke? That if they choose, I mean, if they have a health condition, they're not wearing a mask, the company, they should call the company that they're going to enter in and let them know ahead of time so they can offer curbside. Thank you.
We have been following up with businesses on an individual basis if and when we receive a complaint regarding a business, if there's been, I guess, chronic or habitual, if people have noticed that whether it's staff or customers are continually not wearing masks in various businesses, we do follow up with them individually. We do post updated numbers as far as the case counts. We make those numbers available on our social media pages. So that information, and this was current as of last evening, throughout the county to date, we have thus far had 5,775 individuals that have been monitored, and that monitoring includes close contacts, symptomatic individuals, people that have been tested, travel associated monitoring, kind of an all-inclusive total of everybody. We've had 5,109 negative test results to date. We are currently following up with 350 individuals, whether they be ill, having, if they're symptomatic, close contacts, having test results pending. As I said earlier, 168 positive tests to date. We've had 11 individuals that have been hospitalized thus far. We do see an array of people as far as symptoms. Some people are asymptomatic or they have no symptoms. Other individuals have very mild symptoms all the way up to the extreme where people are ill to the point where they do require hospitalization. And as I said, we've had 11 individuals hospitalized thus far. And in Ashland County, we have had 2 people that have passed away from COVID-related complications.
So one of the things that we track on our cooperators meeting, we still meet every week with Bayfield County, Iron County, Ashland County, the EMS from the City of Stillwater, the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Management, and health officers. And I still coordinate that every Wednesday. One of the things that we really track is this chart that you see here. So this basically is a Health Emergency Readiness Coalition, or a HERC. This is our region. The Northwest region is this color. And here you basically see that, basically immediate beds availability, total beds. And so we're at 71% capacity of hospitalized beds. And, if that gets that gets up to 85 or 87%, that's a concerning issue, because not only are you having, less capacity for regular healthcare and regular, strokes and injuries and stuff like that, you're going to have an influx of respiratory issues coming forward with possibly flu season overlapping on COVID. And so right now we're watching that. It's at 71%. And you can see you've heard a lot talk about ventilators. So here you see our HERC has 122 ventilators and 23 are being utilized right now. But you can see on this chart here, we are ticking upwards in our utilization of this particular asset. So we are doing our best, trying to limit this spread and trying to help with that. So this is from the DHS Wisconsin hospitalization data. So
Thank you.
Any more questions for Liz?
I think we're good.
Hearing none. So thank you, Liz, for your time.
Thank you, Liz.
Heather or Lori, make a note that Supervisor Kabasa has arrived. We go to C, public comments, 3 minutes per person, 30-minute limit for all public comments. Do we have any public who would wish to log in?
So Lori, do we have anybody with their hand up?
No, we do not.
Do not.
Nope, I don't have anyone with their hand up.
Okay, and I don't have anybody here, the public, besides our newspaper reporter. All right, so we can move on.
All right, we'll go to D, regular agenda, approval of the September 8th, 2020 County Board of Supervisor minutes. Need a motion?
Joe Rose, I so move, we approve.
Motion by Joe, seconded by Pepe. Motion carries, thank you.
And then we're going to go to 1B, the town of Morris.
Okay, we have a modification on the agenda. We have a letter from town of Morris. I'll read that quick. On behalf of the Ashland County Board of Supervisors, I am writing this letter to show support for a safe multimodal trail from the city of Mellon to Copper Falls State Park. I believe this proposed project will greatly benefit the safety of all those wishing to visit Copper Falls via the biking, hiking, and walking trail. This proposed multi-use connector is a critical element of the community's tourism and economic development strategy. I'm respectfully requesting that you approve the town of Morris's grant application for this multi-use connector for the town.
And so we would seek a motion to approve that.
Need a motion to approve this grant application.
Kathy has her hand up.
Went through a committee, this issue.
I don't believe this didn't go through a committee. This is just a letter of support that they're asking the county board just to say, approve this grant.
What I'd like to do is the Forest and Recreation Committee is meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And if they could bring it to the committee for the Forest and Recreation approval.
That would be, I think the board would need to table this item. So we would need a motion to table it.
This is Supervisor Quebec. I have a question. Is there a time constraint on this grant application for the town of Morris? Do we know about that? I would hate for them to miss out on an opportunity if the county board isn't able to meet for a couple of months.
One of our supervisors basically had spoken about this issue, brought it to our attention. I can't remember who it was. It was you. Okay. Rich. Rich, can you fill us in on the timeline? He's coming to the microphone.
Yes, I don't think there's no real quick timeline. They just more or less wanted the county to be on board with them to approve this trail. And they wanted monetary support too, but they don't actually have to have the monetary support. They would just love to have the verbal support that you would have them go through with this trail. So that's what it's about. There is no big timeline, I don't think, on the grant or anything.
Yeah, there you go.
Mary Jo Gingras, Ashland County Land Conservation Department. I will be meeting with the town of Morris next Tuesday night to discuss this issue with them. And I am meeting with the Friends group that's bringing this proposal forward. I'll be walking the proposed trail this weekend with Ruth Brennan, who's kind of heading this up. So I will be working with that group to seek grant funding, and I'd be happy to update the county board as it moves forward. But I think, as Supervisor mentioned, they're just looking for verbal support from the county board to move forward with this. This is going to be quite a long-term process over a period of years to be able to put together various funding sources that would help implement this project.
Thank you.
This is Mackenzie. Can I speak?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I guess in hearing the conversation so far, I'm wondering, could we change the letter that they're requesting? Instead of saying that we support the trail, meaning grant for the trail, and not commit really to the support of the trail until we know more about how it's going to be laid out. And I guess that would be a motion that I would make, is that we amend this resolution to say we support the exploration of this trail for grant funding.
This is Supervisor Negro. I would support Matt's motion.
This is Supervisor Ortman. May I speak?
Matt made a motion. He said, I understand that would be a motion to amend the letter. And so, and Laura, my understanding, Laura basically seconded that.
This is Supervisor Ortman. May I comment, please?
Board, they were also asking for about $500,000. So there was money they were asking for. So I think this needs to be tabled. They can bring it tomorrow to the Forest and Recreation Committee for approval, but I don't think we should move on it when we don't know all the facts. Is there money or is there not money involved in this?
So Dick, we had a motion and a second to basically amend the letter to say we support exploring this trail process. Is that what they said, Mary Jo? Thank you. Are you writing that down, Mary?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. That was for.
Yeah, the motion and the second on the table to basically amend the letter to read that we would explore what?
Motion to amend the letter in support of Copper Falls motion to amend the letter in support of seeking grant funding. Mackenzie and Negro.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Say
Aye.
no. Motion carries. Thank you.
We're going to go to number 2.
Okay, D2 on the agenda, county clerk election overview.
Heather, what did you want to look at, basically?
She's still on.
Heather?
She was having problems with her mic before. Maybe that's what it is too.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. County website on the top bar under elections,
Yep.
and then just select the November election.
Okay.
So
And actually, before I interrupt you, Heather, can people on our home, can they see this website that we're looking at?
if they're on their phone, I'm not sure.
No, obviously.
No,
but if
we
they're-
won't.
Okay. No. Okay.
But they will be able to view the website and, on their own time.
Okay.
And
Well,
they would just go to elections and then November 3rd election.
yeah. We'll try to fix this for the next meeting and try to figure out to make sure that the recording has what I'm seeing on here, because we're still not pinning the right feed. Okay, go
Okay.
ahead, Heather.
So the general election is only 4 weeks away, November 3rd. Mail-in absentee voting is well underway. I'm just going to touch briefly on the upcoming election process. To vote absentee in the municipal clerk's office will begin on October 20th. So if you see on the website here, under My Vote, you can click on that for more information on the absentee process. It's a great resource. You can not only request your absentee ballot, but you will also find what is on your ballot, your polling location, your municipal clerk information. And if you're not already registered, you can also register as a voter from this site. There's quite a bit of information on here. To receive a ballot, whether absentee or voting at the polls, you will be required to show a photo ID. On election day, the polls open from 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. After the close of the polls, the election workers tally the ballots and report the results to the county clerk's office by calling our office. We have 11 municipalities hand counting ballots and 5 municipalities using tabulation equipment. The results from all municipalities are called into the county clerk's office, therefore they are not electronically transmitted. Periodically through the night, we will be reporting the results on the website as they become available. The day following the election, the municipal clerks deliver election supplies to the county clerk's office. Voters are scanned in and uploaded to the WisVote system through the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Finally, the county canvassers will meet and certify the results of the election, reviewing all returned documents and poll books, and submit the final tally to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. This is our 5th election this year, and our municipal clerks spend countless hours for weeks on these elections. Therefore, their workload this year has been substantially increased. They are the heart of this process, and they have done an exceptional job, and we couldn't do it without them.
Any questions for
So
Heather?
yep, questions?
I just wanted to basically have Heather just come out and report that, you've heard national news. People are nervous about this election being stolen or fraud or something like that, but we have it covered. I talked to Heather the other day about, do we need more poll workers? Because you'll see some places in the southern part of the state, they're having trouble getting enough people to show up at the polls, and they're getting the National Guard involved. where are we at with poll workers for our towns, Heather?
As of right now, we are good. We may try to get some backup. A lot of, from the past elections, the National Guard has stepped in and helped a couple of our municipalities. As of right now, I don't foresee any need for it, but that can definitely change tomorrow.
So just a little education for the county board and for the citizens that are watching online to say, we're confident we have a good, solid election process here in this county, and kudos to the citizens of Ashland County. They're stepping up and they're volunteering their time to be poll workers and help with the American process of elections.
Anything else for Heather? Thank you for your report, Heather. We go to B3.
Yep.
Resolution R10 2020 1362, a WDNR grant for Marengo River stream flow.
Mary Jo, would you cover this for us?
I did provide a letter to all of you board members in your packet about the background of this resolution. This resolution was passed at the Land Conservation Committee meeting last Tuesday, September 29th, and forwarded to you. We are planning to submit a Wisconsin DNR surface water grant on November 1st for $49,500 to fund installation of this project. For many years, resource managers have wanted to study water quality and sedimentation in the Marengo River. However, lack of funding and staff capacity has severely limited implementation of such research and monitoring. Our department is currently working on flood mitigation projects in the Marengo watershed, but we have no baseline data to quantify current conditions or future comparisons. My department is working closely with the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, to install elevation gauges in a large-scale stream flow gauging station on the Marengo River. A monitoring program will document water quality and help to evaluate proposed watershed restoration activities. The gauging station will collect continuous elevation flow data from precipitation and storm events, temperature, and sediment information. The data has been of interest to resource managers for more than a decade and has been identified as a priority in the Marengo River Watershed Action Plan of 2013. However, funding has never been secured to implement such monitoring. So as I mentioned, we are applying for a grant on November 1st. We've already submitted a pre-application proposal with the DNR. And then this grant would fully fund the installation and maintenance. And then we would be working on securing future funding for annual maintenance after the first year's worth of installation. I'll go ahead and read the resolution, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. Resolution to support an Ashland County surface water grant application for a Marengo River stream flow gauging station. Whereas large-scale land conversion during forest removal and agriculture at the turn of the 20th century across northern Wisconsin had tremendous effects on the Marengo River watershed, yielding unstable streams overloaded with sediment and reducing the quality of aquatic habitat. And whereas these effects are still being felt today, coupled with unprecedented floods and exacerbated by current human activity, these impacts prevent the watershed from achieving its full habitat potential and improving its resilience to climate change and other disturbances. And whereas wetlands have been lost from gullying associated with multiple record floods, and floodplains have been filled with excessive sediment, reducing floodplain storage. And whereas reducing volume and velocity of stream runoff is critical to protecting and improving watershed health, and it involves both restoration and protection activities. And whereas the Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department recognizes that baseline stream data is needed to better quantify hydrology and flood characteristics for making sound decisions on locations of land conservation, wetland restoration, and stream connectivity projects. And whereas a grant agreement is requested to install a real-time stream flow gauging station with continuous water quality sensors on the Marengo River. And now therefore be it resolved that the Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department will meet the financial obligations to fully and satisfactorily complete the project, and hereby authorizes the county conservationist to submit required documents to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for financial assistance. Be it further resolved that the applicant will comply with all local, state, and federal rules, regulations, and ordinances relating to this project and the cost share agreement. Thank you.
We need a motion to approve the resolution.
Franek, I make the motion to approve the agenda item.
And then seconded by Ms. Schutte.
Made the motion.
Franek.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve the resolution. All those in
Aye.
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 It carries, thank you. Okay, we'll do D4, citizen participation plan for revolving loan grant.
Yeah, so as the board has been aware, we've been working through the process of granting the revolving loan fund to the county to do County Road N. We went over this, you approved the citizen participation plan at the last meeting. This is basically confirming the three individuals that you see here, Marty Vitek, Joe Eder, and Ryan Thiem, to be basically the people that would be on the citizen participation committee. So this is just basically an appointment made by the chairperson for the county, and we're just looking for ratification of that. We'd seek a motion to confirm appointments to the citizen participation committee.
This is Supervisor Quebec, so moved.
We got a second from Rick.
And Almeida made the motion.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve these appointments. All those in favor? Aye.
Excuse me, this is Supervisor Negro. I had a question. Are these paid positions? Is this a paid committee?
They are not.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries, thank you. Next, we go to the resolution R10 2020 1360, the forestry variable acreage share payment.
Okay, this resolution allows the forestry department to access a loan for 50 cents an acre to conduct the annual business, which is paid back with timber revenue on an annual basis. And there is a write-up in here, and there is a resolution which passed through the forest committee, and their recommendation is to have the county board approve this resolution. With that, I would be seeking motion to approve the resolution for variable acreage share loan as presented.
All right, do we have a motion to approve? Well, hearing none, I guess it dies. And we'll go to the next resolution, R10 2020 1661, forestry snowmobile trail maintenance projects, season 2020 and 2021.
This resolution is for working with the Ashland County Snowmobile Alliance on snowmobile trail and maintenance. And the resolution is an annual resolution, which is brought from the forestry department. This resolution is required is required in order to participate in the state snowmobile grant program. The funds allow us to build, maintain, and groom snowmobile trails in Ashland County. This grant funding is the backbone of the trail program, and it has passed through the Forest Committee, and the Forest Committee is making a recommendation to the County Board that you pass this resolution. And with that, we'd seek a motion to pass the snowmobile trail maintenance resolution.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Rick first.
Pepe?
This is McKenzie. I'll second it.
Pepe had her hand up first.
Pepe?
Pepe's the second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to E7, Resolution R10 2020 1363, Health and Human Services. Racism is a public health crisis.
Okay, this went through the Health and Human Services Committee, and they passed a resolution 5-3 that declared that racism is a public health crisis. The committee voted they've also voted to forward the resolution to the full county board to consider and see attachment. And I believe Terry Barningham is, Terry, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so if there's questions, Terry Barningham is the Director for Health and Human Services. She can answer any questions concerning this resolution.
This is Supervisor Quebec. I'll move to support the resolution. To approve the
Franek,
resolution.
We got a second by Campbell. And motion first by Quebec.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
You may want to open up for debate in case somebody has any questions.
Any questions on this?
Okay.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
D8, review proposed county budget.
Okay. I'm going to go through a couple different high level items first, so you can kind of get a concept of where the budget is. The first thing we're going to go through is, where is the timeline? So just give you an idea where we're at. We had started the budget process back in July. So Finance Committee met to issue guidance. We went through with August and September. The Finance Committee has seen it a couple times. We're at the October 6th meeting for the county board. This is a new step for Ashland County. In the past, county board really didn't weigh in on the whole budget until November, the second Tuesday in November, which would be the public hearing. So I'm adding this process step in here for the board so that the first time they see it isn't the public hearing for it. Within here, you can see, if you go back to September 15th, BPA insurance, we basically had I went over this with finance. They had a significant increase, and I basically have been negotiating with them, and just this morning, I basically negotiated and got a different reinsurance, and we're going to be hopefully filling out that paperwork today. We should see pretty much just a very slight increase in insurance, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 compared to, $150 or something like that. So I'm very pleased that we're able to do that. Just for the county board and citizens direct information, we are self-insured, and so we basically every month the county puts in $1,800 into a bank account for each family member, and each employee puts in $200 into that same account. And we just pay the bills out of that. So BPA, Benefit Plan Administration, they basically are like they're like the invoicers and the payers. They have access to our bank account, and they have contracts with all the clinics and the pharmacies and the chiropractors and everybody. And so they make payments every month for every individual directly, from there. And so that's what it means to be self-funded. If somebody has a catastrophic injury or a catastrophic, cancer or some high dollars, we basically have a $65,000 per individual reinsurance plan. And that's what I was negotiating basically is, what does it cost to reinsure somebody who, once they go over 65,000, then a insurance company picks that up. Because obviously you could, if you say you had somebody had a $2 million claim on insurance, well, that would bankrupt the county. So we have to have insurance for that. And in addition to that, we also have a overall maximum claim value for our insurance. We basically, so let's say you had, we have about 200 employees. Let's say you had 100 employees come in at $64,900. Well, of course, that would bankrupt the county too, even though they're underneath that 65,000. So in this case, we basically have, those are two types of reinsurance on there. So the good news is I'm pretty solid on that. So looking forward here, the county board can give feedback for this budget as the finance committee and the administrator put together. Finance committee will basically take feedback that the county board votes on today. If there is votes to adjust the budget one way or the other, I will basically put those together, and my goal would be to have a packet that would go out to the finance committee on Friday this week for the notice that we'd have a meeting on the 15th, next Thursday. And they basically would pretty much solidify or approve the budget. At that point, then we basically would talk to the bank to get a loan for our debt loans. We basically would send out public hearing. We have to publish the notice on the 21st, and that has to be noticed for so many days inside the paper. And so in this case, November 10th will be the next board meeting that we have. And my anticipation, we'd have the same meeting place right here, 10 o'clock at the church. And that will be where you're basically going to hold a public hearing for the budget and approve the budget. And that's by state law. And so you have to approve it on that date. After that, we basically, after you approve the budget, then we basically close on our debt loan because we're financing parts of the government, obviously, with loans, since we don't have enough general money. And then we basically would certify the levy to the state by the 15th of December. That will basically go on the tax rolls. So from a high level, that's where we're at in the process. Let's see here. Overall, we have a budget right now that we basically are balancing the budget by basically decreasing monies to outside entities. And the finance committee had asked that I look into if we have statutory or contractual obligation to those, and I have not had time to look into that. And we're basically balancing the budget with $250,000 from the bank, which obviously is and actually 180 from another fund. So there's a few $100,000 that are one-time use monies that obviously are gonna put a cash crunch on the county. I'm not in favor of supporting that budget. In the end, we would be looking at the next line item in the agenda would be the wheel tax, which would make it more sustainable. But in the budget that is presented to you in your packet, with basically taking $250,000 to balance the budget from the bank, this is our proposed levy for a $100,000 house. And I did have our, excuse me, I did have land description give me the average price of the house. And so the average price, average value of a house for Ashland County is $84,000. So in this case, this is actually a little bit over $100,000. That's a higher than average house. the interesting thing is when you look at, we have a breakdown of towns and cities. The high town, it would be obviously La Pointe. Their average home price is $221, and your low average home price for a town, and I can't remember the town, it's down south somewhere, it's like 27,000. So this average price is what you're looking at. It'd be $56 a month to support county services if you had a $100,000 house. Of that $56 a month, $29 would go to public safety. So that basically would include the jail, our deputies, investigators, emergency management, and humane officer. Highway department would get $3.86. General government, which is court operations, all the things you see at the courthouse, deeds, treasurers, coroner, elections, attorneys, IT, buildings and grounds for the courthouse, administrative services, finance, HR, zoning. Culture and recreation, $1.63 every month for UW Extension, Fair, 4-H, Rec and Development. Health and Human Services is $14 a month, $14.91 a month for basically public health, economic support, ADRC, veterans, children and youth, aging unit, behavioral health, all the different areas there. Conservation and development is actually $1.05 to the good. So that actually puts money back into the county fund, mostly from the forestry department. And so the forestry department, as you're well aware, has had significant decreases since the Verso closing. And I've talked about that a couple times. We're looking at budgeting, instead of $750,000 a year from the forestry department, we're looking at budgeting getting $550,000 from the forestry department for next year. And this year we probably had I don't know, maybe $150,000 decrease from lack of timber demand. So between there and the grants that land conservation is getting, that kind of grouping in there kind of, actually contribute money, which is fully expected, especially with the forestry department, selling stumpage and making money on that. And then your capital debt, this is your building remodels, repairs of vehicles, IT, sheriff's equipment, airport projects. That's $11.91 a month. So that's how your $56 a month for county services breaks down for a $100,000 house. When we look at the overall budget here, see if I can get this on the screen here. View. So the county is funded not 100% with levy. We have roughly a $21 million budget, and out of that budget we generate revenue. And so we have people like Mary Jo who are getting grants. We have Health and Human Services who gets money from the state for the mandated services that we provide. A lot of the mandated services that are provided by Health and Human Services are not funded 100%. There are some, but most of them are funded, like child support. You don't have an option of not providing child support. You have to do it by state law, and the state pays you 67% of that, or 66% of the cost. And that's very typical. And so of that $21 million, when you get down to the bottom line for our budget, we end up with, roughly $7 million is levied on the local taxpayers out of that $21 million. So basically 30% of the county budget ends up being paid by the local taxpayers, and the rest is still paid by the taxpayers, no offense. It's just that it's spread out because it comes from, either sales tax, or it comes from basically your income tax or your federal government. And so, which there isn't any money tree. It all comes from the taxpayer. So when you think about the $21 million, it's all taxpayer money, regardless of where it comes from. So when you think about a department by department level, one of the things we look at is how much is on the county levy. And the levy, the reason we talk about county levy is because there's a levy limit law that came into effect 20 years ago. And that basically limits the county from raising the taxes to support the services that are mandated by the state. And you can only increase your taxes by basically net new construction. So not even increased valuation. And so in our calculation, because our county is not a growing county that much, our increase of tax levy, which is the general levy, which is like $6.8 million, is $23,000 increase is possibility. And so, but when you think about all the mandated services, that doesn't even cover, that covers one person if they got healthcare. That's it. If they move from single to family. So when I talk about the money here on this particular sheet, and I'll go into further detail later, but I kind of want to get you an idea of where, this goes back to that, where do we spend our money? Where does the county levy dollars go? So in this case, general maintenance and general government, that's that list that we had before on that, where does the money go? There's $952,000 of general levy money that goes to there. Public protection, you have $4.4 million goes to public protection. So the majority of our county levy dollars goes to the sheriff's department. And so when we talk about theoretical cuts of how would you downsize the government to fit within the budget levy limit law, really you have to look at law enforcement as your primary place to cut because they're the majority of the dollars. And they generate some revenue, but it's really hard to generate revenue in law enforcement. People are not kind to being billed for their incarceration. Health and Human Services, again, they are second largest. They get $2.2 million, so about half of law enforcement. But you can see the difference in here. Basically, your expenditures are close to $9 million for Health and Human Services. Only $2.2 million comes from the county general levy. And so, the vast majority of their funds comes from federal or state sources. Highway, same thing. Highways expenditures are, $2.4 million, of which $584,000 is on the general levy. The education, this is UW and a couple other things in here. There isn't any revenue, so that's 100% general levy dollars. Forestry, Land Conservation Division, that's where we saw the positive of 158. We come down with a general levy of basically general levy monies of 8.3 million. The sales tax, we're basically looking at around $1.4 million in sales tax. We're going to probably collect maybe $100,000 more than that this year. And so we went over this with the finance committee, and I basically talked it over with the 8 local county administrators in northern Wisconsin up here about estimates. And the consensus pretty much is that we're looking at next year, because there'll be less stimulus money. We feel we've been very strong on sales tax this year. And I think that's part of that is there's been some, pandemic buying. People are staying home doing remodeling projects. They're stocking up on toilet paper. So these are things which we're getting. And, when I read the newsletters from the 9th District Federal Reserve, we feel that there'll probably be less sales tax next year. So we're basically decreasing that $100,000. This is not an exact science. This is something that we're basically doing our best to try to get an estimate. It is much better to underestimate your sales tax than to overestimate your sales tax and then have to take out of the bank to cover your bills, because then you basically budgeted money coming in that's not going to be there. So that's at 1.39, 10,000 from computer aids, $250,000 we're going to take from the bank to borrow, to basically, we're not even borrow, we're just going to take it from the bank. That ends up being $6.6 million for the county levy. So we come down here, this is your $6.673 million general levy. We add on the debt service. And so the debt service is something that is just approved by the county board. So general levy, the levy limit laws dictate that your general levy cannot be increased past what we talked about earlier without a referendum from the citizens. The county board basically looked at a referendum in 2018, and it did not pass a citizens vote. And so basically the county has been doing what most counties are doing, which is just moving things from general levy to debt levy, because debt levy can't pay staff salaries and healthcare and building rents, you know, and other things like that. So the debt levy continues to increase due to as a unintended consequence from the debt levy law. So this is our proposed debt levy. We're trying to move things from the general levy to the debt levy in order to fund basically things that can't be funded with debt. So again, healthcare, staff salaries, you know, items, you know, the predominant of your expenses are staff in a county. That's your highest budget item is staff. And so, but you can take out debt levy for capital or other types of improvements. These were 4 vehicles that we used to fund with general levy, but we no longer do. Security cameras for the courthouse. We have a number of holes in the security camera recording system at the courthouse, and it's recommended from the security team for the courthouse that we basically upgrade that. Highway, we're taking out $1.25 million loan for the highway department. So again, when I'm kind of looking back at the road, at the registration fee, wheel tax, the wheel tax goes to the highway department and it supplies roads. If you don't have a car, you don't pay for it. But to say the highway department is fully funded, you know, it really is, you're taking out a loan to pay for the highway department. You're going to the bank, you're paying interest just to fund the highway department. And so that's, you know, you're already spending the money basically here. Cars for Health and Human Services. I'm going to buy 2 cars for Health and Human Services, mostly because of a risk mitigation and risk management issue. It totally freaks me out that we would have, theoretically, we have county employees using their private cars to transport clients or children, you know, child protection, if you're going out to pick up a child, and that staff member's putting that child inside of their personal car, and if there's an accident, you know, God help us all, you know, from a liability standpoint, and that poor employee would be stuck between their insurance for their own personal car and the county's worker comp and other liability insurance. So I basically am insisting that we try to do all county transports in a county car if we can. So I'm going to place 2 cars over there for that, for a risk management standpoint. In addition, it will decrease the mileage that Health and Human Services staff will be accumulating, because we won't be paying them to drive their own cars if we just get a couple cars. Over the years, we probably would have to get more cars if we want to decrease mileage all the way on private vehicles, but I'd rather not pay people to drive their own cars. We need a new boiler. These are 2 loans. One is for the Sanborn building, and that's the one, Health and Human Services building. And then we have the downtown building, the 514 Main Street. That's the one that was purchased in 2018, I think. The Sheriff's Department, we have a radio dispatch link that we need to pay for. I'm going to replace the tasers. Tasers are basically tested out every month, and they're becoming less reliable. And again, this is a risk management standpoint for me, which is if an officer pulls out their taser and it doesn't fire, all of a sudden now we're basically faced with a life and death decision versus a minimal invasive intervention. And so I want to replace the tasers with new, more reliable ones. Courthouse Connect radio is a security issue, basically connecting the courtrooms with dispatch and sheriffs so that we can basically more readily access help if we have an active shooter case within the courthouse. couple squads fully outfitted are close to $100,000. This is fencing for a tower. Our rec officer is a scheduled UTV, snowmobile, and trailer, and that's fully depreciated by the reimbursed by the DNR. So we have a dedicated officer that basically just patrols our trails for four-wheeling and snowmobiling. And the state, from the registration fees that you pay to register your vehicles, these funds are paid for the officer and for the equipment for him to do that over a 5-year period. Land conservation, truck replacement. This is airport. Again, I'm moving what used to be in general levy, the support of the airport, we're moving that to debt levy. So we're taking out a loan to pay for equipment and repairs at the airport, IT equipment. And then this $286,000, this is a loan which, when I got here, you guys had a revolving line of credit. And again, I've talked about that before, that wasn't kosher. And so we basically converted that to an 8-year loan to pay it off. And that was like $1.8 million. So we're paying that off. We got 7 years left to pay on that loan to clean up the line of credit that we had before. The 2 buildings, the Sanborn building is like a 10-year loan, and the New Horizons is like a 5-year loan. So we still have a few years to pay left on those. This comes down to a debt levy of $1.9 million. I am basically recommending to the Finance Committee that we transfer $184,000 from some funds that are capital only. Again, these are funds which cannot be used for operations, healthcare, and salaries. One is $84,000 that was left over from a bond that you'd issued when you built a jail 15 or 20 years ago. And again, since it was a bond, it can only be utilized for capital improvements, of which by its very definition, debt levy is. And then another one is a we have a capital loan or a capital fund project fund that was left over when you sold the building. That was down on Highway 13 there, just north of the grocery store. You sold that building a few years ago, and that was put into a fund for capital improvements. It's been sitting there unused for years, and so I'm going to take $100,000 out of that to decrease the debt levy increase, and that will still leave $136,000 in there if we have an emergency boiler repair or an elevator or something. So there's still some emergency money in there for repairs if something happens. So that gets us down to your proposed total levy per thousand would go from $6.44 to $6.72. So your what is that? 28 cents. So you basically on your $100,000 house, it would raise your taxes about $28 over the course of a year for this budget right here. And then the library levy, we did move. We had been funding out of general levy again. This whole exercise is trying to save general levy to pay for staff, because I'm doing my best not to cut staff if I can help it. And so we moved $23,000 that we spent for Great Northern Library Services that does the distribution. That was general levy. I'm moving that into the library levy, and so that basically again saves that money to pay for healthcare for a staff member. In addition, and this is where I haven't had time to look at this. This is we have a number of outside entities that we give money to. So this is just money that has been coming out of general levy, and we tax citizens and then we give it to these organizations. So these are the requests over here. Ashland Aging Unit. I basically, and these are some of the recommendations. I have not time to proof this list. I will have this done by next Thursday for the Finance Committee to see if we have a legal obligation that we can't decrease them. But Ashland Aging Unit requested that. I decreased them 5%. BART, I decreased them 50%. UW Extension, 5%. County Fair, 50%. Tri-County Corridor, 50%. Visitor Center didn't make a request. The Northwest Library, I moved that to library levy. Northwest Regional Planning, 50%. Economic Development, 50%. Tourism, WCA Tourism Bureau, 50%. Hazardous Waste, 50%. Housing Authority, 50%. And then at the airport, again, I moved $46,000 to debt levy and $41,000 is operation. I decreased them, whatever that is $6,000 there. And then so basically we went from 582, which is you're basically just writing a check out for $582,000, decrease it down to 443 with two items, $43,000 going to debt levy and $23,000 going to library levy. So I have not made any final determination on there. If we don't pass a wheel tax, basically we would just have to take more money out of the bank if we want to fund these organizations fully, or if we have a legal obligations that we can't decrease them. And again, that's, I have not had time to research that. One of the things when you think about county programs, and we'll probably come up with something to put on the website, which is mandated services. The state basically, mandates almost everything the county does. There's hardly anything that we do that is not mandated by the state that we have to provide for them. And so I don't know what would happen if we said we don't have the money to do a mandated service. We haven't crossed that bridge because we're, so far we still have money in the bank that we can still, I think we'd have to run out of money totally for that to happen. But taking money out of the bank is one step closer. And so we basically have a list of everything that we have, the legal obligations that we have to provide to the state. And again, the state has put counties in a pickle by saying you have to do these services and you can't raise taxes. I am working on and in your packet, you'll notice that I'm working also on, I have a bill drafted that would basically remove the court systems, so the district attorney and the courts, from the general levy limit law. And that would be a separate levy, just like the library levy. So the library, the people that were paying attention 20 years ago, they said they didn't want to get involved with the counties because they realized when the end comes and the counties, push comes to shove, they're just going to cut libraries. Well, they're their own separate entity. They have their own levy. And so they're not bound by that levy limit. And that's one way I think I can help save local rural counties is by removing courts, because we have very limited avenues to control anything that happens in courts. They basically can assign psychiatric cares, evaluation. We can't furlough those staff. They can't take cuts because they're another branch of government. We basically just pay the tab. And so I think from a legislative standpoint, I'm working with WCA on this, and they seem to be excited by my idea.
Clark, can I ask you a question about that? This is Supervisor Kvak.
Yes.
I'm really interested in finding out how much of that very big chunk of money that's going to the sheriff's department is being spent to incarcerate nonviolent offenders. I think your presentation makes it pretty clear that the war on drugs is really is something that we can't afford right now. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from my constituents about the county wheel tax and concerns about government being just too intrusive in terms of this, policing people's bodies and what they're putting into their bodies. And so, when you do talk to the WCA, I think it also makes a lot of sense to think about initiatives that are taking place in other states to decriminalize marijuana and regulate marijuana the same way that alcohol is regulated. One of my constituents told me that you know, alcohol prohibition, ending alcohol prohibition and taxing alcohol was the way in which county governments were able to save their budgets during the Depression. I don't think it makes any sense for any of our county residents to be incarcerated or charged or go through the court system for marijuana offenses. And, you know, certainly I think that the court system and the judges and the prosecutors should be doing everything they can to keep people out of the jail system right now, because we also have to pay for people who are being incarcerated their health care. That's also a self-insurance program that's mandated by the statute when people are sick. And if we have, you know, thankfully it looks like we don't have any COVID in the jail yet, but we could have some really, really serious healthcare costs related to COVID for people who are being incarcerated.
Yep, so just for the education for the county board, if, you know, this is like Ms. Quebec said, that if the district attorney prosecutes somebody and the judge sentenced somebody, we don't have a choice but to incarcerate them in the jail. And so that's not, again, we don't get to decide that. That's a judicial process. They're a third branch of government. Those would be legislative changes that would have to happen at the state level. You are aware that I was county administrator out in Oregon in 2018, 2019. And of course, out in Oregon, along with Washington and Canada and Alaska and California, marijuana is legal and taxed. And so we got a few $100,000 every year at the county level by just taxing marijuana. It was very good to support our programs, and we didn't have to have anybody in jail. So again, those are political decisions that rest outside of what I do. The county board could investigate that if they wanted to look at a resolution to encourage legislative change. The county board could weigh in on that, and there'd have to, you know, one of the committees, the law enforcement committee, would probably be the best place to rest a beginning point to decide if they want to recommend decriminalization of marijuana. In addition to this, we also have a drug court and a criminal justice coordinator council. And so our drug court, basically, we have a couple people that work in that department, and all they do is work with people that, instead of incarcerate them, we divert them. And we divert them into a program which is a high-touch, you know, system where you're supposed to check in with the judge every week or a couple times a week. You go through this whole process of sobriety and trying to not relapse. And we're actually using some of our CARES dollars, the Road to Recovery dollars that came from the federal government. We're going to expand some of our technologies in order to have people check in more frequently via phones, and in order to facilitate not having people traipsing through the courthouse and going all the way up to the judge to check in with the judge. We're going to try to do more of this remote checking in for drug court. In addition, we're looking at a different technology for less contact for drug testing, because everybody in drug court gets tested. And sometimes they would use patches, sometimes they use urine tests. We're actually looking at a saliva test. So we're looking at trying to use some of this money that's coming from the state and federal government for COVID to facilitate this program, because it's an excellent program that saves the county money by not incarcerating people if they can be diverted to drug court. In addition, our criminal justice coordinator, they basically work strictly on diversionary people who should be diverted from incarceration to do other types of things. So yes, those are all a lot of high level questions that, you know, some of which involve legislative changes.
Joe Rose asked to be recognized by the chair.
Joe.
The United States already has more people behind bars than any other country in the industrialized world. And I feel like a lot of these people that are in jail right now should be in residential treatment rather than in jail. So that's just a comment that I thought I would make. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to continue down with the packet, which you've all seen, so I won't have to read it, but you've all read this. This was presented at the finance meeting. In order for the county to continue to survive, there's going to have to be more revenue to provide the mandated services that we have. So a couple different things that we have been looking at. Timberlands. So one way is to raise more timber money. We would have to basically buy more land. We currently manage 40,000 acres of timber. If you were to double that, you could, maybe even with timber prices decreased, you could increase the timber revenue. Part of the problem with that is you're basically going to be increasing the debt load on the current citizens of your generation to pay for your children and grandchildren's more sustainable government. So that would be a vote of the county board to basically say you want your children and grandchildren to have more revenue in the county government to support services, and you're going to have to pay for it. Gasoline tax is levied by the state. We can't do that. We can't do franchise fees, which are fees on electrical use, natural gas use, phone, cable, that cannot be utilized by county governments. Room taxes are only available to towns and cities, not counties. One of the things we'll be looking at in the future here, and this is one of the things that I'm looking at when we get to the wheel tax, we're looking at the wheel tax as a 1 year, it expires on December 31st next year. And part of that would be, we'd be looking at how do we support county government services by raising revenue elsewhere. One of these would be a premier resort tax. This would require legislation to go through the state, Senate, and House and signed by the governor to declare our county this way. It'd be the equivalent of another sales tax. And that would require everybody to lobby their legislators to basically try to get this through the government. The city of Bayfield did this. So they went through the legislative process years ago and they got them. So they get 40%. They basically get a 0.5% of the sales tax within the city limits to support city government. So that's one thing we'd be looking at next year. Sales tax cannot be raised by state law. Levy a referendum, that would be another thing that we'd be looking at next year. If we're looking at that, my recommendation would be that we would do that in April, because then you would know, developing your budget for 2022, do you have that levy a referendum to support county government operations? Again, you guys tried this in 2018, it didn't pass, but you have to do something within your county government, or you're going to be in fiscal distress in a few years here, where you won't be able to make payroll if you keep doing what we're doing here. Debt levy, again, I've talked about that. Expenses, so we're looking at, obviously we can't eliminate mandated services. That's by very definition. So it poses some challenges. We've looked at furloughing employees. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. Basically, our courts or DA systems are mandated by the state, and we cannot control that staff. Other departments get money from the state for staff time, so it makes little sense to furlough them. We have grant employees who are not on the levy at all. Highway bills other entities to work for which they get revenue, so if they don't work, the revenue goes down. The sheriff department runs 24/7, so furloughing those staff would increase costs by having to pay time and a half, because unless you're going to drastically change, how you manage a jail and how you manage 24/7 policing, that would be a very difficult thing to manage. In the end, it would just be a fairly limited number of employees you could furlough, and I just don't think that'd be fair or just. Permanently laying off employees while decreasing services. I've not put any proposal together to figure out, are there employees that are basically not mandated, and what would it do to the government services if we basically eliminated them? Increasing employee contributions to healthcare, this basically giving employees a pay cut. This would spread the pay cuts out to more staff, but again, it sends the message to staff that they can expect no increases for the foreseeable future if they stay with Ashland County. So I am, we took out all the increases in this budget. all pay increases with exception of the sheriff deputies, which have a union contract. In addition, we removed travel and office supplies and conferences. And I'm concerned about our county employees. If we save as a county, you'll never get a pay increase ever if you work for Ashland County. That's just, I just don't think we're gonna have a dedicated workforce if we give that message. I think whatever we do in 2021, we need to look for 2022 to say, how can we basically keep our staff here working for us in the county? And I don't think giving them pay cuts or never giving them a raise again is a method to keep staff. Again, that's not a good message for your staff. Eliminating retiree employee health care, which that's going to come to the executive committee. That would not affect the 21 budget. That would be a 22 budget thing. Voluntary reduction of works, furloughs, incentive payments to refuse county insurance. Talk about the organizations. Partnerships is something we'd look at to see are there any services or internal operations which can be combined within the city. Travel. We're taking money from the highway fund to put into the highway department this year, also a one-time use to support the highway operation this year because they don't have enough money. So they're basically spending down their funds. HHS committee voted to give that group of people a 2% raise. I did not put that in the budget. I didn't think it's fair or just to just give one county department an increase and have to cut other county departments further or take more money out of the bank just for one department. Outside entities. So yeah, this is 13 pages long. I apologize for that. And then finally, one more thing, and then I will take questions. So going back to the full budget presentation. This is the budget that would this is the detail of the level of budget that we actually produce for the public notice. And so this gets into a finer detail for the citizens to see what are actually what are we actually spending our money on and how are we raising the revenues. And so this is just the same thing that you saw before, only in greater detail. It gets down to the same point on the bottom, basically, which is having to use $250,000 from the bank to balance the budget this year. And then it has the same issues here. So, I've been talking for 45 minutes, and so I'd be happy to entertain questions or recommendations that the county board would like to see the finance committee and the administrator look at for next year.
This is Supervisor Ortman. May I speak?
Hi, Charlie.
Hi. I don't like to do this, but it's really sticking in my craw. So I'm going to be kind of a smart aleck here for a second and say, wouldn't it be nice if we had a piece of property that was worth, say, $1.5 million and that value negotiated by a rank amateur? And maybe if we had kept our fiduciary responsibility to the county, we could have hired an actual negotiator and maybe got several millions for that and kept our rider, which was designed so that if that property ever became worth a lot of money, we'd get it. So I'd like to scold everyone in this board that voted to give away our lottery ticket. And with that, I would also like to say that in this COVID environment, we've forced businesses to close or even shut down or even reduce their employees, whatever. We've forced a very bad economic situation on the hospitality industry in this community. And I think it's just, we're gonna have to tighten our belts as government too. It would just be a shame to ask those people who are maybe newly unemployed or newly out of their business to try to come up with the shortfall that we forced on them through them no longer be able to pay taxes. And that's a comment for the next item, but That's all I'd like to say. Thank you all very much.
Any more questions or comments for Clark?
Elizabeth Franick, may I be recognized? Hello, this is Elizabeth Franick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at the sheriff's budget again, and in the future, if we can look at alternatives for incarceration of individual juveniles that go outside the county for juvenile corrections. I know we just hired a liaison officer for the school district through the city, and I'm hoping that maybe with his education, you know, in the school system, that we can reduce the amount of juveniles that are going to be outside the county, and, you know, Health and Human Services to be working with those folks in a greater way, as putting individuals outside the box, like thinking outside the box with a team, starting with family members that would voluntarily take this juvenile, as in the past with my daughter in my situation, it could have been prevented if it started much earlier in her childhood. I'm not going to speak about that right now, but going forward, I think that would be a cost savings to our community, our county, because a lot of that is transporting individuals out of the county. Also, more AODA counseling. They can't do it in person right now, but they can have a counselor available via Skype, internet, phone, you know, and this individual that is seeking help for their AODA counseling, they could, you know, use that service. Also, even thinking outside the box, I know this is funny, but as a retail person, we get a number, I mean, I can't even think about how many people this summer would have bought anything to do with Ashland County, Ashland shirts, Ashland merchandise. If we could get somebody that would, you know, say, you know, that they were gonna just accept a little minimal contribution for their service to produce these things, we could help our county budget. I mean, postcards, you name it, anything to do with Ashland County or Ashland, they would buy it. There's so many tourists still coming through that ask me every day about Ashland magnets, Ashland County memorabilia. Thank you. That's all I have to say. But thank you for your hard work on the budget.
Yes, yeah, the cost of outside placement for juveniles is a significant cost. There are different types of therapies that we work with. One is called multisystemic therapy, which basically involves a holistic approach towards juveniles and delinquency to try to engage the family members and the friend group, more importantly, because, you know, let's be frank, if we've raised kids, we understand that by the time they get to be mid-teenagers, their peer groups are probably more influential than we are. And so this is something that Terry Barningham could probably give a presentation to the county board at some point concerning, you know, what type of interventions do we use and risk assessments to determine juvenile delinquency interventions.
This is Mackenzie. Could I recognize? I believe I have the floor. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. I guess I want to piggyback on a little bit of what Charlie said. I agree. I think it's a tough year for everybody, and this is not the year to look at raising taxes in any way, shape, or form. Whether you want to call it a fee or you want to call it a tax, it is what it is. We have several people in the community who have lost work. We've had stores and businesses closed up, and we've had those that are still working many times have limited hours. And it's just not reasonable to expect people of our communities to find extra money during these days to take care of this. That's what we have savings in the bank for. And I think the finance committee needs to take a long, hard look at where they make cuts, because cuts need to be made. And they're not going to be good, but they have to be done. And then what's left, you take it from the bank if you need to. But you do not increase the taxes in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Pepe. You want a ladder?
I have been involved with a company up in Duluth in distributing food. Each time it's something different. I usually get a half a semi-load. And it used to be a little hard, and I'd be out there peddling, trying to get rid of this food, but not anymore. This food is going faster than I can keep it in my garage. I have asked not for 1 penny for gas, hauling, trailers, nothing. I have people that I call now, and they call other people, so they come to our house to distribute this food. Now, I tell people, this isn't for the poor, and it is for the poor, but I'm not putting it into the poor. Anybody that needs it gets it, because right now, for fruit, you go to the store and you play a juggling game. Can I get fruit? Or do I dare get another roll of toilet paper, maybe? And it goes on and on and on. It's always a guessing game for them while they're shopping, because half of them aren't working. And it makes a difference if they have fruit on the table, if they have potatoes, or even if they have a couple dozen eggs I gave them so they can make something. This makes a big difference. And at this time, I only had 2 people who were a couple that called me and said they were for the sales tax. And why? Because they heard through the grapevine, which Action is great for, BART's going. They're going to cut BART out. So that means then they're not going anywhere because they're older. They each got a car that they'll pay on, but they don't dare drive anymore, they said. And so they have, and I said, well, I would rather ask first before, and she says, no, we don't want no problems. We just want BART. And I says, okay, I'll honor that. But the rest of the people I've talked to, I'm going to get barbecued, strung up by my jeans, choked to death, and a few other things if we pass that. And the one thing I heard a lot of is truckers. One of my sons is a semi driver, and he's got 4 semis. That's 16 wheels when he's running, And what do we do with the loggers' trucks? There's so many things we have to think of. Can we use this for 1 year and then let it go? I have yet to see where they cut our taxes on the new high school they built, or the sewer plant, or anything else. And I'm just saying, once we got it, we're not getting rid of it. And I personally, I could pull my belt in a whole bunch if push comes to shove. I don't have to right now, but it's starting to show because my husband doesn't work. He's retired, but our drug bills, our hospitalization, and our insurance are going to kill us. Because I have Alzheimer's, I'm paying now for a place to live in a few years, and it's not cheap. And I'm starting to pull my belt in because my bills are really starting to soar. So please, please think about this tax. There's got to be another way. And if we have to pull our straps in, let's do it. Thank you.
Joe Rose, question. Are we discussing this wheel tax right now?
Not, well, I was.
Not yet?
Not yet. I was just taking questions on the general budget, but.
Yeah, I don't think it's come up yet.
Yeah, there's no further questions on the budget. Yeah, go ahead.
This is not a question, but one of the things I'd like the county to look at, and this was something that took place many, many years ago when that jail got built, and the county and the city entered into an agreement for the dispatch system. And the city helped to fund the county dispatch system so that they would not have to put in their own dispatch. And we were getting money from the city to help pay for the county dispatch. Along about a few years later, the city pulled out of their funding of the county dispatch. So the county does the dispatch for the whole county. And a few years ago, a survey was done, and something like 70% of the calls that come into dispatch are from city residents. And yet the city supplies no funding for the county dispatch system. And I think that's something that we have to look at and try to negotiate something with the city.
We had, I was aware of that when I first got here. Obviously, it's not news. And we looked at the contract, and the contract that the county signed, or the agreement that the county signed with the city, it had a stipulation of like 2 or 3 years of payments. And then after that, it said any future payments will be negotiated. And so far, I haven't got anybody at the city to basically say they're willing to discuss it or basically contribute to dispatch. I suppose at some point we could ask to be added to the agenda for the city council, to have the city council weigh in on that. But the contract was written so vague. We have no legal, in my opinion, we have no legal stance to demand money from the city. The city would have to voluntarily want to contribute to the county for that. And so far, I haven't got anybody to respond to say they want to voluntarily give us money for dispatch. Something to look at in 21. Mr. Berlin's coming to the stand.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is Commissioner Berlin. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'd like to discuss just a little bit on the review proposed county budget here. Just today we talked about the 21 debt levy. And just last month we had, this may be for a point of clarification. Correct me if I'm wrong when we get to this number. On page 3 of the monthly finance packet last month, item number 31, the debt service fund. That was $1,260,695. And at that point in time, we had discussed at that particular meeting, we have a yearly payment of $291,600. Is this debt service fund different than the debt levy?
So they're rolled in between. So the $286,000 was to clean up the line of credit that the county was doing before I got here. And then, so that goes on. We basically have 3 long-term obligations. We have the $286,000 line of credit we have to clean up. We have the Sanborn building, and we have the 514 Main Street building. Those are long-term obligations that are added into our debt levy. The rest of the debt levy, as you saw in the presentation here, was basically short-term loans. So we're basically taking out a loan and getting the money like December 10th, and we're paying it back the first part of February after we get our taxes in. So basically, it's basically a way around the general levy limits. Because like I say, we're taking out a loan for $1 million for the highway department to fund the highway department. And we take that money out for 75 days or 65 days in order to keep that operation going. And so it's all part of, so you have these general obligations, but you also have this debt levy, and the two combined, short-term and long-term combined to make the debt levy, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
This is Supervisor Ortman. May I be recognized, please?
Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you, Dick. Regarding this dispatch arrangement with the city of Ashland, clearly there was an initial agreement made where we would split costs. And apparently there was a wiggly agreement for the future payments from the city of Ashland. So what precludes us from giving them 30 days notice and then say you can do your own dispatch after 30 days, figure it out? That I think would cause them to come to the negotiating table and then we would be a service provider that they could contract with, or they could do their own dispatch. Either way, I don't think we should act as if we're hogtied to a contract that someone is trying to. I don't think we're hogtied to this having to provide services for the city of Ashland for free. Thank you.
We can add that to a future agenda for either the finance committee or the executive committee. I think that'd probably be an executive committee discussion. So I can do a write-up for that and get a formal response from the city in writing instead of just phone conversations, and then present the contract that was signed, and the executive committee can weigh in on that.
This is Mackenzie. I'd like to make one point on that.
Go ahead, Matt.
Charlie, I think your point is well taken, but there's other places within the county that also get, so I guess in all fairness, that needs to be looked at as well. If we're going to treat one way, we should treat them all the same. So I don't know if we're in the position to be able to do that. And I understand the agreement, and I'm not sure which way to go on it, other than we need more information, but we can't lose sight that there's other entities within the county we provide this service to for free as well. Thank you.
Any more comments for Clark?
This is Supervisor Ortman. Can I respond to that, please?
Go ahead, Charlie.
Hi, thank you. Good point, Matt. I guess I would just say to that, do we have a contract with them? Was there some agreement that they agreed they would pay a certain amount to us and then reneged, basically? I guess we could just modify our agreements with them because we think it's right, but I don't think we have any contractual complaints with them. I'm imagining that our arrangements with them were made and we're both keeping both sides that both of our sides that we agreed to. The only conflict I've ever heard of is this one with the city, but obviously you guys will look at that. So thank you.
Any more comments for Clark?
This is Supervisor Negro.
Go ahead.
As we've been going through this on finance, because I am on there, I've been looking into a lot of other ways for us to increase our income and try to shift some of the things that we're doing for maybe on the debt levy to user fees for certain things because we have more control of that. But there are things like there's a forest carbon project that we could, we have over 1,500 acres of land, which actually we have 30,000, But we can use that after we've been certified to bring in income for big businesses because they're going to buy credit swaps someplace and we have the forest that sits there. That money can be used to buy more land that we need, to help with our roads. It'll give us it's a big puddle of money. And if anybody wants any of this information, I have a bunch of links of how it works and everything. I can email it out to everybody. We can also, as I talked with Matt McKenzie, he brought up leases in part of our county forests. Why do we not do that stuff anymore? So what kind of things could we think of doing with that? That premier resort area tax, it adds onto certain products, but it also is a pool of money for roads. So and yes, it's going to take a little bit, but at this point, you know what? I heard Pep say tighten the belt. I don't like balancing the budget on the backs of people who, from the 20 some odd calls that I got from every range of income, every age, parents with kids. I had an older couple that's already fighting to see which medications they can buy. They have 2 vehicles because they have different things to do, and you know, they're looking at maybe having to get rid of a vehicle and then still having to decide if they can buy their medication. These are people we can't balance this on. The room tax can be done as a county. You just need to set it up as a commission, and each area needs to buy in for it. And that pool of money can be used to boost tourism, yes, but it can also be used as an economic development piece for tourist-based businesses and attractions. So we would be able to use that for a different piece and plug that hole, because the little bit of money we give AADC, that ends up being matched for grants that she writes. And we can't cut that stuff right now, because right now is the amount of time where we need to keep this stuff going. People can be doing online businesses, and she's doing a lot of consulting. She's writing 80 some letters to help people get those $2,500 grants from the state. I know she'll do her damnedest to provide every service that she can, even if we would cut her. But our Finance and Economic Development Committee is a kind of a joke on that piece. We're kind of an overseer of a nonprofit that does really well with the little bit that we give them. There's also service combination with the city. We just talked about the agreement that we used to have about the dispatch. There's other things that could be looked at there too. I brought up the tax-based items that we could swap to user fees. We could also, when I was talking with Gary Merdig, we talked about buying groups, see if we can get bigger discounts. Bayfield, Iron Price, you know, we can look at having buying groups. We can go through each department, decide which technology pieces we can leverage to take some work off of them. We can streamline and be more efficient, because now with that tightening the belt, like Pep said, we all got to do it. We can look at all the contracted jobs we have out, which Clark couldn't think of very many off the top of his head. I have talked to him about that. And we can pull some of that back in and start doing it for less. Contracted jobs are anywhere from 11 to 60 some odd % less efficient than having a service inside our government. And I know this one's going to be an expense, a grant writer on staff. But you think of how many grants if we had another Mary Jo sitting out there, because she is a beast. And so is Terry and her department. And I know only certain departments can, but I'm watching Dorothy Tank helping Highway with a FEMA grant. And then we've got Lissa out of UW. She's going to help write some grants from that same FEMA puddle to help outlying areas. And Mary Jo is also writing a grant off that, because we were all on a call for the FEMA grants just a little while ago. We had a grant writer on staff. This is the way we need to go. If we're going to fund things, we have to have a solid base of grants. And relying on just a few people here and there is not going to do it. We need a really strong plan going forward. And while I'd like to think that, you know, we could use this wheel tax once, and the information that we've got is, I suppose I could wait till then to tell you it's not 75, it's 85 bucks on those cars, and it's 100 bucks for the trucks. So it's on somebody's transportation. We have enough people with barriers right now that have, you know, if they have a job yet, and if they have a decent amount of income coming in, they still, we're going to balance this on their registration of the vehicle. It just sounds like we're making more problems for people if we do that way. You know, and also as a county board, there's things that we can do. We can look at not having paper printed. I know these are like little tiny things, but as my husband's grandma said, you know what? Every little bit helps. Look at reducing the number of supervisors. We can look at going back to all Zoom meetings. We saved some there. You know, we can go paperless. Let's leverage that technology too, because you know, we're talking about all these departments right now, and we're not turning around some of this on ourselves. We can make sure that as a board, you know, that we only travel when we have to, and I'm sure that's pretty easy right now, but we can also combine some committees. And yep, it'll take a little bit longer, but we can still do it. There are things we can do. And I'd really like to look at that airport agreement with how we're splitting some of this. But there are other things. This is just me looking for things. I have a friend in the DOA that is looking for ways for us to trim things too. And he's sending me different things. That's where the lots of cities, municipalities, etc., anything they can find that would be something that we might be able to do a little better by turning it into a user fee. That's what everybody's doing too, the grants, and taking it off the debt levy and taxes and stuff and switching it over to user fees depending on what it is. I mean, we've got more avenues than sounding like we're threatening our employees. We have really, really, really smart people in all our departments. And I know some of them see some of these processes that they're doing that's taking them twice as long. And just because sometimes it is what it is, and it's, you know, we can streamline some of this stuff so they have, you know, less hard time of doing things. Maybe there's something that they know that a piece of technology would help with. We can do these things. And I'd rather see us take the money out of our bank account at this point, tighten that belt, turn everybody's innovator on, and do this the right way instead of balancing this on somebody's car title. Anyways, there we go. Soapbox done.
Clarence.
I'll give you one small example of how we can streamline some of this stuff. In Health and Human Services, we had years, maybe a little over a year ago, we had 2 people in the fiscal management department retire. Pete Herlevy in that department figured out how he could combine some of the jobs that they were doing, those 2 people were doing. He hired one person to replace those, and he kind of reorganized what they were doing, and so we replaced 2 people with 1.
Kathy?
When we talk about the wheel tax, I know it's coming up, but everybody else is talking about it. So maybe we can discuss this and then we can vote on the wheel tax. Because of the pandemic, this is not the time to do a wheel tax for Ashland County. What we need to do is not do the wheel tax. And I received a lot of calls and emails, and I'd like to give Dick a list of random people who voted, they would vote, they want us to vote no for the wheel tax. I have 23 people that voted no and 3 that voted yes. This is not the year to do a wheel tax for Ashland County.
Well,
Joe Rose asked to be recognized.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, we're in regard to this wheel tax. We're already required by law to pay license and registration fees. And legally, we're required to have insurance. And not to mention maintenance and repairs on vehicles. And right now, we're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. A lot of people are unemployed, and we're talking about this tax for 1 year. But more often than not, a 1 year tax becomes permanent. All we have to do is take a look at that. So anyway, I want to go on record as being strongly opposed to this wheel tax. And I've had a lot of people contact me as well. Thank you.
Why don't I just talk about the wheel tax?
Well, we're going to get to it in the next agenda item, but we're kind of mixing the two together.
Yeah. Why don't, I mean, they're all intertwined. So basically, in keeping with the finance committee's direction, which is basically look for user fees, basically charge people for the fees which they're using. Wheel tax is being proposed and recommended by the staff of Ashland County for people that would basically pay for using the roads. Like you said, you already paid the state. You already paid the state a registration fee for your vehicle. This would be an additional $25 as a user fee to use the roads, and it can only be used for
25 a wheel, isn't it?
No, it's not per wheel. It's a registration fee that only goes up to vehicles that are 8,000 pounds. Anything over 8,000 pounds is exempt. In addition to farm vehicles and some other things. There's the write-ups in there. You can learn more about it. Dual purpose farm vehicles, trucks over 8,000. And basically it doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for this, so we don't need to beat it to death. I'm basically just saying this is a user fee for the roads for people to register their vehicles to support the highway department, which we're taking out $1 million of loans to fund. And so I'm just trying to basically apply it towards a philosophy of the people who utilize the service should pay for the service. And that's that's basically the short answer. There's a recommendation, there's a write-up, there's an ordinance. If you were to pass an ordinance, we basically go in effect on February 1st. And the ordinance reads, this fee shall be effective until December 31st, 2021, unless renewed by the Ashland County Board of Supervisors. So if you were to pass this and we don't take money out of the bank, it would just go away naturally on December 31st next year, unless you voted it back in again. And so if you want to take money out of the bank to balance the budget, that's a direction for the board. I report to you as county board members. I'm making a recommendation. I don't think it's good policy to take money out of the bank to balance the budget. It's a super short-term issue. You're going to have to raise more. I'm just telling you, you're going to have to raise more revenue to fund the government. And if you don't do this, Laura has some very good recommendations and we have some recommendations, but we can't act on those and figure that out by Friday when I have to produce the packet for the finance committee. So whatever we do today, has to be done by Friday so we can do the packet for the finance committee to approve the final budget. And so I have two things that I think as policymakers, you guys should weigh in on. You should vote on the wheel tax And if you don't approve that, then the second thing that you should vote on is restoring all of the cuts to the outside entities, because, you know, those are issues, and you could leave that to the finance committee if you want. But this is your opportunity as a board to weigh in on the outside entities to say you don't want them cut, which means we would just take more money out of the bank. But those would be two items that I would need to produce that budget for the finance committee to get it done by Friday. And if I have those two answers, then I can basically put them back in the budget and produce that for the finance committee to give a final review. So with that, I would basically, I would seek a motion to enact the ordinance, adopt ordinance number 010-2020-114. That's the wheel tax ordinance, yes.
So are we done with number 8 then?
Well, they're
kind of intertwined.
They're intertwined. They're intertwined enough, basically. So if, I mean, my gut guess is it doesn't seem to be a lot of support for the wheel tax. But if that's the case, then we have to revisit how do we want to basically, in the short term, the next few days, decide, are we going to fund the outside agencies, because we, you know, and then get a budget together. So I think the first step is for you to basically vote on the wheel tax, and then that will dictate what you do on the other side. If you basically support the wheel tax, we basically would support the outside entities according to their requests, and then we wouldn't take money out of the bank to balance the budget, and that would be the balance. So I think the first thing would be either move to adopt or just let it die on the floor. That would help us move the discussion down the road.
This is Supervisor Ortman. I'd like to speak the next chance I can. I know Gary's waiting.
Hang on a second, Charlie. We have Gary Murray.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to wait to speak to see if this was going to die. My assumption is if there was no motion, it's laid on the table and it's died. That's question one. So I guess I'll ask the chair, did the motion by the administrator just die?
Yeah, that's a point of order. I think that's very legitimate. So I'm basically making a recommendation to say, move to adopt ordinance number blank. If there isn't a motion to do that, then we don't need to discuss it. That's obvious what would happen.
Okay, so if that has happened and that died, I personally believe.
Well, the chair hasn't weighed in on yet. That if he needs to, the chair needs to weigh in and say, is there a motion? Is there anybody to make a motion on this? If not, the discussion's over. We don't need to discuss it.
All right, you've heard Clark. Is anyone going to make a motion to adopt this or deny it?
This is Supervisor Ortman. I guess I have a comment first, if that would be okay. I feel I'm kind of embarrassed. I had an understanding of the wheel tax that wasn't actually what the wheel tax was, and that's my fault. I should have vetted clearer. I thought it was $25 per wheel. And I'm not saying I would support it still, but you know, I would go back to my constituents. If this were to come up at another meeting, I might get a different feel from my constituents, and I might feel different myself, but that's all I'll say on that, except that at this moment, I wouldn't support it, but I know some of my constituents think it's more than think it's like $100. They think it's $25 a wheel, and I was under that impression too. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We don't have a motion to approve or deny this. If we don't, motion isn't made, it'll die. Anyone? The motion dies. Gary.
Chairman Puval, I want to just make a comment that we have to be careful here because the administrator is asking for us to discuss whether or not we're going to increase something outside of the agenda. It's not on the agenda. It was previously. I believe his recommendation should go back to the finance committee to make that decision on whether or not we reallocate money to these outside organizations. We had agreed in the previous discussion to potentially look at cutting some of those. I think the finance committee is the one that should take that up, not the county board at this time. It's not on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's, you know, the concept of it was in the packet to basically, the outside entities were part of the packet. I didn't particularly put a motion in there to say fund or don't fund. These are feedback basically for the administrator to produce the budget for the finance committee, and for the finance committee to basically approve a budget to come back to the county board in November. And so I guess this would be an opportunity for the finance committee to hear comments from their fellow board supervisors to say, either you want to do this or not do this. I guess kind of up to the finance committee to decide if they want that feedback. Otherwise, they could just wait till they discuss it on the 15th. And county board members, if they have any thoughts concerning these outside entities, they could just weigh in at the meeting and attend the meeting on the 15th and weigh in on that agenda item, which would be perfectly acceptable.
This is Supervisor Negro. I would think if any of you guys wanted to go ahead and send us an email or give us a call too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be on that meeting, but let us know what you think. I mean, this is all, each one of us has different people we're representing, so that's what we're here for.
Go ahead, Matt.
Are you talking to me, Dick?
Your name come up. I thought you wanted to speak.
No, I think I've said enough already. I don't want to see any new taxes or fees. The only thing I haven't said yet that I would say is you need to figure out a way to recognize our employees as well. All of the employees.
Yeah, I guess that's a decision the finance committee would have to make a recommendation and say, do we want to give a raise to every employee? I think we did a rough estimate, seat of the pants. I think a 2% raise would be a couple $100,000. I think that's kind of our rough estimate. We haven't figured that out to the nth degree because you have issues such as overtime. There's contributions to WRS. You have payroll. We haven't done the work to get down to that level because, without a wheel tax, again, I think I would not recommend a budget that would take an extra $200,000 out of the bank and make basically, $450,000 or even $500,000 backfill out of the bank for this year. I would not support a budget like that, but that is ultimately your decision because you are the board. And I've said this a million times, but the one thing that you guys do, the most important thing you do, you can only do one thing in the course of the entire year, is you set a budget because that's your priorities. That's how you basically decide what you're going to fund, what services are important to the citizens. And if you do nothing else, this is the most important thing you do in the entire year as a county board. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion with you. Make sure that the full board is basically informed about what we're doing, not just the finance committee.
I would tell the finance committee to be creative and to look at things other than monetary compensations, such as you could put some of the contract so it comes in at the end of the year. At least they see something down the end of the road, or perhaps vacation time or other time off. So don't just think money. Think of some of the other things that translates to money.
All right.
I'm good. We can move on.
We're going to county to E, county administrator updates. Yes, Bill.
I guess the bottom line, how much of a shortfall are we anticipating? I know that we have money, we have some money in the bank, but as far as the budget, how much of a shortfall?
So if we just balance the budget the way it is and cut the outside entities, we're taking $250,000 out of the bank to balance it. If we want to restore the outside entities, we move some to debt levy. I'd have to figure that out top of my head. Maybe that's another 50,000 bucks roughly. So we basically need to take $300,000 out of the bank to balance the budget the way it is. And that's after cutting every department and, but not touching staff. So I haven't done that yet. And so take $300,000 basically to balance the budget.
Do you know how much money we actually have surplus in the bank right now?
Well, we basically have in our investments, which are the investment report, which we have at the finance committee, we had at the last finance committee, we have a $1 million CD, and that has been rolled over for a number of years. We have a $500,000 account that has the Mellon money in it. And then there's a whole mess of different funds, but the main treasurer's fund, that's the money that the taxes come into and the taxes go out of. And so that goes anywhere from a low point last year in December, we had $29,000 or $23,000 in it, which is basically not making payroll, up to $7 million. So when taxes come in and then we make the settlements with all the cities and the towns. So all your property taxes come into the county, and then the county writes checks to the school districts and WITC and the cities and the towns. And so we get this big influx, and then, but it's obligated, we can't spend it, and it goes all the way down. So as a backup plan, if that treasurer's account was gonna go negative, we basically would cash in that CD or that Mellon money to basically make payroll. So by using $300,000 out of the bank, it's not going to bankrupt the county next year. But if you do it the year after that, you're probably going to see some significant issues for cash flow, and that would be disheartening to me to see 2022 get to a cash flow issue.
Pat, get close to the mic.
As I was looking at the wheel tax, looking at some numbers here, the wheel tax is a very regressive tax, meaning it advantages the wealthy, which is why our legislature allowed local government to pass it. The proposed wheel tax would have helped the budget to a tune of around 4 or 5%, which really just matches the increase in the budget this year that's proposed from $6.44 to $6.72 per 100,000. So it's even the wheel tax would be a one-year fix. And we'd still be facing the same situation of deciding, how do we live within our budget? I went back to my taxes to 2009, looked at my tax bill there to 2019. Ashland County taxes have increased by 30%. The inflation rate during that time is 19.2%. So the county has been spending money faster than inflation is. And given this is a county with low wages, that's not a long-term approach to making things work. So I think what the Finance Committee has to do is two things. One is, how do we get through the current year? And you know, it's not nice to take money out of the bank, and I do appreciate the administrator's work on this, and I certainly respect his recommendation of trying to make things balance and not draw on funds, because that's not the long-term solution. What we really have to do is to find a way, aside from raising revenue in whatever ways that we can, we're gonna have to find ways to work with a tighter budget. Because if we look at this 10-year trend, since Act 10 in 2010, we're not adjusting budgets in a way that's going to be sustainable. And so there are going to be some hard decisions here, and it's more than getting through the 1 year. It's also going to be to change some things in a way that are going to be more sustainable. And I do appreciate the administrator's work on this and the suggestions that people made here today. And I think it's going to take a collective effort on everybody here and others to make that transition so that we can live within our means in a county with a very high poverty rate.
Yeah, and I will echo those comments, Pat. I appreciate the comments. If you're relying on me to fix this budget, I'm going to fail because I'm just one guy. And it has to rely on the policy setting, which is you, the board, but more importantly, it has to rely on our staff. Our staff are the experts. I am not the expert at all those different departments that we have. They're the ones that are going to have to weigh in and say, what would happen to services? And I fully support it. We need to make a sustainable government. And that's the policy that the board has to decide. Does that sustainable government mean less government? Or does that sustainable government mean reliance on something other than local property taxpayers to pay it? And does it rely on regional or statewide taxpayers or federal taxpayers to pay for it? This is part of the overall discussion of collectivism. Do we basically try to have the state pay more for local services in this county, or should the citizens in this county pay for all the services that they receive? And those are philosophical decisions that are way above my pay grade. And so those are things we'll have to work on.
This is Supervisor Ortman. Might I be recognized at your earliest convenience?
Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you. I agree, Clark, with what you've said. Obviously, we get services and we pay for them, but I don't want people to forget that lots or most of these services are mandated, and they're mandated to a certain level that we've never been able to pay for truly. And so at some point, I think we're going to have to cause the state to come down here and try to make us pay for something they ordered us to do that we can't afford. And then we have that battle in court, however we do it. But if it doesn't, and I've stood on desks down in Madison and talked to senators about these unfunded mandates, and I asked them, what do you do when we're broke? When we don't actually have any way to get any more money that you send down a mandate for us to pay for? You know, at some point that could conceivably happen. You drive our county into receivership, then what do? You're going to come down and pay for everything with state money, or you're going to close us down, you're going to decertify the county? We got to press this issue in the courts sooner rather than later, before, you know, half of our retired population can't afford to eat. So while I agree there's some merit to we should pay for the services we get, well, yeah, we should pay for services that we want that aren't forced on us by the state of Madison or the capital in Madison. So we got to draw that distinction, and we have to be able to say no when we don't have money, or when we don't have or when we decide we don't want to spend money on that. Right now, we're in this untenable position, and that's what Janet Bewley and Beth Myers and Tammy Baldwin need to be saying, and the president of the Senate in Wisconsin and everybody in Madison. These unfunded mandates are untenable and they're unsustainable. So we really got to get that going. And if we can force a legal issue on that just to get it started, I say let's do it. Quit doing something that's mandated and tell them, come on and do something about it. Thank you.
Kathy, speak close to the mic, will you?
Can you hear me now? So I'm going to make this very quick because this is going long. The Mellon quitclaim deed that the county got, one proposal would be to use that money to balance the budget so Clark can move forward with the county. And then in 2021, make those cuts in the county. Do we need 2 new squad cars in 1 year? That's where we have to tighten our budget for things like that. But use that money we got from the Mellon quitclaim deed to balance the budget so we can move forward and make the cuts like everybody's talked about. Thanks.
Okay, so I will speak to the mandate. So I've been around government for 35 years. I'll try to make this quick. Counties didn't used to have as many mandates, and what you had was disparate outcomes. And so you had counties that were growing, let's call them rich counties, they had services. You had poor counties that weren't growing, that didn't have a lot of economic activity. they basically had less services. The disparate outcome that the state basically came about was you had people moving around the state based on which county they had a better service. And this is back in the 70s and early 80s. And they basically started mandating these things so you don't have 72 individual mini states. You end up with a kind of a uniform package of services from Ashland all the way down to Janesville, and you don't have to move around to get a service. I remember specifically when I was in 1984, when I started working for the county, if we had parents who had a child who was born disabled, they were encouraged to get that child on a waiting list for services, because the hope would be that in 21 years, when that child exits the school system, they could be on the top of the wait list, because it would take 2 decades to get services in some counties because we weren't mandated to do it. And so every county just decided, we're going to provide services and we're going to provide it to 10 people. Everybody else has to wait till somebody dies. So there are problems with basically letting counties decide they're just going to do anything, because you're going to end up going back to where we were in the 80s. But I guess what goes around comes around. I'm just going to finish up quickly since we are running long here. My administrative reports, the health insurance, I've been working diligently on that. Hopefully I'll finish that up today. I've been involved a lot with this opiate lawsuits. As you're well aware, we're part of the big nationwide 2,000 or 2,500 county lawsuits against big pharma and retailers and distributors, basically 3 main groups that we're basically looking at. And I've been involved with that to talk about, if money comes, how is it distributed? How do you deal with costs that you incurred in the past because you had a high opiate issue and you had high social costs, such as out-of-home placements for children. You had higher incarceration costs. You had other social issues. But going forward, more of the money would be dedicated towards what we would call abatement. And so how do you basically limit future expenditures by allowing treatment and other types of costs for people who have an addiction problem to opiates? And how do you cure that so the counties don't end up with continued expenses in there? So I've been up to my eyeballs in that. I've been working on a DOJ grant where basically I'm coordinating and writing this grant basically to work with the court systems and the sheriff's department for next year to help with the COVID issue. In addition, we're continuing working on managing the $256,000 from the CARES funding that is allocated to us. The end date for claims and purchases is November 6th. So I'm working with all my departments to try to make sure we claim every single dollar that comes out of that, to make sure we're making long-term investments in equipment or capital or supplies that will support us, because the gut feeling is we'll probably still be wearing masks till August next year, and we'll be doing some other types of precautions. So we want to make sure we're using that money before November 6th to set the county up so we don't have those expenses going forward next year. Obviously, I've been working a lot on the public health orders. I appreciate the work that Liz has been working on, and Liz and me and our corporate counsel, Max, we've been communicating most days about these public health orders. How do we effectively try to give guidance or give directives to the citizens to stem the recent tide of increased COVID cases that we have? And those are daily communications. In addition to, I coordinate the regional cooperators meeting with all the local players we talked about before. And so that takes a lot of time to deal with that. Obviously budget, we have weekly phone calls with the Wisconsin Counties Association with all the administrators around the state, dealing with not only COVID issues, but also legal issues and spending issues and CARES dollars, because we're smarter together. Just one of us, I'm not very bright, but if I put me in a room with everybody else, I'm brighter. And that's how we look upon it from the Wisconsin Counties Association. And that's enough for now. That's basically my update for you, my supervisors. Any questions about what I'm working on or any directives you'd like.
Yep.
Can you? You can come over here.
No, that's fine. I just want to say that when we get to the point we're debating here what we're going to do with this budget, there's a little something going on that says there's 7 people that are going to leave the courthouse with no jobs, and that's a grapevine. I really think, like you said, we have the best workers around here. And if nothing else, I think they should become part of the unit with the finance to work together to cut their own and have them help us. Because God knows, I couldn't pick one person I'd want to get rid of. And that's not to say that this is going to happen, but the rumor is. So I think we should include them in on something if we're debating what to do here. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
County Board Supervisor reports. Anybody have anything to report?
I have one thing there.
Kathy?
So this is the situation. The seven towns in Ashland County are losing their ambulance service as of December 31st. Great Divide is leaving us, and they're leaving 7 towns with no ambulance service. That's going to be another big expense that the towns are going to have, and they don't have money for it. Town of White River, Marengo, Town of Ashland, Town of Morris, Town of Gordon, Town of Shannon Golden will have no ambulance service come December 31st. So that is going to be a big expense when that comes, and they're asking us supervisors for the county to go to the county board and let them know that this is happening this year. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to remind everybody to, nobody else had your hand up? No. Turn in your vouchers before you go, if you have them with you. You have them right up here. Next, we need a motion to adjourn. Mike? We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody wants to stay longer?
All right, Lori, can you see the recording? Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.